John F. Kennedy International Airport. Uncle Bill is meeting a plane from China carrying his favorite nephew, Kyung. After greeting him, Bill drives his nephew to his home. The men pass through a respectable neighborhood in Manhattan. Kyung asks if his uncle's store is located in this neighborhood, but owning a store in Manhattan is just a dream. In reality, Bill's store is in the Bronx, a far less upscale neighborhood, but there's no other choice. However, Uncle Bill has a wonderful apartment. Noticing his father's training equipment for honing martial arts skills in the corner, Kyung decides to work out for a moment, delighting Danny, a boy in a wheelchair from the neighboring apartment. However, it's time for Danny to get ready for school. Kyung helps the boy into the school bus, gives him his video game as a gift, and then heads to the store with his uncle. Bill is planning to sell his business so he can peacefully go on a honeymoon with his fiancée. While his uncle goes to assign tasks to the repair workers, Kyung steps into the shop. He was told that his future aunt is somewhere around, so he decides to introduce himself to her. Since he has never seen her, he assumes she is also Asian, so he approaches the nearest Asian-looking employee and introduces himself as her nephew. It turns out she's just an employee, but the real aunt leaves Kyung utterly astonished. She is a flamboyant, curvy African-American woman who is absolutely thrilled to meet her future nephew. At that moment, a potential buyer arrives to meet with Bill. Bill leads her to his office, and the woman notices a one-way mirror that allows discreet observation of the sales floor. She begins negotiating the purchase while secretly watching Kyung through the mirror as he helps his aunt by carrying heavy groceries. Noticing the mirror, Kyung strikes a pose, admiring his muscular reflection, completely unaware that he is being watched clearly from the other side of the mirror in the office. He finds out later when he steps into the office to report to his uncle about the work he has done. Meanwhile, a friend of Bill's has already pulled up an antique white car to the store's entrance. The car isn't his, so his friend asks him to keep an especially close eye on it. Thrilled, Bill promises without hesitation. How could he not, when it gives him the chance to make a grand entrance at his wedding tomorrow to pick up his bride? Night falls. Kyung and Bill are fast asleep at home with the luxurious white limousine parked beneath their window. Tomorrow is the big day and everything feels just right. But at some point, two biker gangs roll into their neighborhood. They decide to hold a race to see whose rider can reach the finish line faster. Two motorcyclists rev their engines and speed off. Kyung climbs out of the window onto the fire escape to get a better view. He watches as the girls race to the end of the street, then turn around and speed back, not on the road, but over the tops of the cars parked along the curb. At some point, Kyung realizes that one of the girls is about to ride over their expensive car. With no time to think of a better plan, he jumps off the fire escape, landing between the oncoming motorcycle and the white limousine. The girl swerves to avoid him, causing her to lose the race. Turning back, she glares angrily at the person responsible for her defeat, but she doesn't get a chance to say anything. At the far end of the street, police cars appear, signaling it's time to leave. The gangs quickly disperse, leaving Kyung alone in the aftermath. With no other option, Kyung starts calling for his uncle, who is fast asleep and completely oblivious to everything happening around him. The day of the wedding arrives. The recent buyer of the store is also present. Kyung approaches her and politely congratulates her on the recent purchase, offering his help for the next week while his uncle is on his honeymoon. Unexpectedly, the woman agrees. The next morning, after seeing his uncle and aunt off on their honeymoon, Kyung arrives at his new job. Sitting in the office with his new boss, Kyung doesn't notice when members of the biker gang from the previous night enter the store. It's only later, through the one-way mirror, that they realize the gang is brazenly stealing groceries. Kyung and his boss step out into the store. After the owner's unsuccessful attempt to reason with the thieves and make them pay, Kyung steps in. Being an excellent fighter, he takes down all 4 gang members in just 5 minutes. Forcing them to apologize and leave the store. Kyung's first day at work comes to an end, and he heads home. On his way, he notices a group of thugs attacking a young woman and dragging her into a dark alley. Our knight immediately rushes to the rescue and catches up with the thugs. Pretending to be a cop, he scares off the criminals and helps the frightened young woman to her feet. He doesn't recognize Nancy, the same racer who lost the race.
Thank you.
The girl suddenly kicks him, and at that moment, men with baseball bats appear from all directions. The plan to lure the Asian man out as payback for ruining the night race works perfectly. The gang members charge at Kyung, but he's not so easy to defeat. Using anything he can find as a weapon and relying on his natural speed, Kyung fights off the gang and manages to escape. However, the bikers have no intention of letting him go and continue their pursuit. The trouble for Kyung is that he doesn't know the city well, so within 5 minutes, he ends up running into a dead end. The gang appears at the entrance to the alley, but instead of killing him, they pelt him with empty bottles. Bruised and covered in cuts, Kyung collapses onto the asphalt. He's fortunate that a quarrel breaks out among the gang members, distracting them. They leave him lying there and walk away. The scene shifts to Nancy as she arrives home, revealing that she is the sister of Danny, the boy in the wheelchair. Nancy and her brother live alone and do their best to support each other. Curious, Nancy asks Danny where he got the new video game. Danny excitedly tells her about Kyung, the nephew of their neighbor. When Nancy steps out onto the stairwell, she comes face to face with the bloodied, unconscious man she and her gang had left for dead in an alley just an hour ago. When Nancy learns from Danny that the unconscious man is none other than the kind neighbor's nephew, she drags him into the apartment and tends to his wounds. In the morning, when Kyung wakes up, Nancy is already gone. Danny explains how his sister cared for him the previous night and even made him breakfast. After eating, Kyung sets off for work at the store, but he doesn't get far. The biker gang is after him again. Kyung tries to escape from the bikers and runs into a multi-level parking garage. Reaching the rooftop, he hides in a random truck, but the bikers find him and try to push the truck off the edge. At the very last moment, Kyung manages to jump out of the truck, staying on the roof behind the bikers. The chase continues. Only by leaping onto a neighboring building does Kyung finally manage to escape. After some time, we are shown a meeting between gangsters negotiating a diamond for money exchange, but the other party pulls out weapons. A few minutes later, we see several familiar bikers on the street, spotting wounded gangsters fleeing a chase in their car. The driver's injuries make it impossible to stay in control, and the car crashes into a store. The bikers immediately run to the car and loot it, stealing a pouch of diamonds. A minute later, the pursuers arrive. The gangsters pull out automatic weapons, forcing the bikers to barely escape into a nearby building. One of the bikers climbs over the roof and drops into another building, where Kyung and Danny happen to be taking a walk. Kyung hides Danny in a storage closet and watches through a slightly ajar door as one of the bikers trips over Danny's wheelchair. Moments later, the gangsters catch up with him. A minute later, the police arrive and arrest everyone, taking them away. Unbeknownst to Kyung, the biker hides the pouch of diamonds inside the cushion of Danny's wheelchair. As a result, Kyung, without realizing it, becomes the unwitting holder of the diamonds that the gangsters are after. After taking Danny back home, Kyung meets Nancy and reconciles with her.
Thank you. Oh, thank you.
Later, when the police release everyone due to lack of evidence, the biker returns to Danny's home in search of the diamonds, only to find gangsters already there searching for them. Forced to flee, the biker runs far away from the house. The next evening, Kyung visits a nightclub where Nancy works as a dancer. They sit down at a table, but Nancy's gang is also at the club. When the bikers see the leader's girl chatting with the same Chinese guy, they immediately start chasing them. However, Kyung and Nancy manage to escape on a motorcycle.
Damn, bitch! Get to the bikes! He's gonna pay for this big time, man!
But the gang knows where to find Kyung. The next morning, they show up at his uncle's former store. Not finding Kyung there, they trash the place, leaving it in ruins. They get so caught up in the destruction that they don't notice the gangsters from the night before pulling up. The gangsters kidnap two of the bikers and drive off. Later, during an interrogation, the bikers refuse to reveal anything about the diamonds. In retaliation, the gangsters throw one of them into a crusher. By lunchtime, Kyung and Nancy arrive at the store. Seeing the devastation, the owner scolds Kyung, expressing her disappointment that he wasn't there when she needed him most. Kyung, furious, demands that Nancy tell him where to find her gang and heads straight to confront them. Crashing their hangout, he beats them up and ends by urging them to change their ways.
Why lower yourself? Don't you know you're the scum of society?
At that moment, one of the two bikers kidnapped by the gangsters returns, carrying bags with the remains of his friend. He reveals that one of them stole the diamonds from the gangsters, and they need to return them. Kyung suggests calling the FBI, as he has their business card, and Nancy suddenly realizes where the thief might be hiding. Meeting at the designated spot, the thief is horrified to discover that it's not the FBI but the same gangsters. To survive, the thief confesses where the diamonds are hidden. The gangsters grab Kyung and head to Danny's home. Nancy and the bikers are left behind as hostages. At the apartment, Kyung takes down the gangsters, retrieves the diamonds, and prepares to exchange them for the hostages. First, Kyung runs into the fully renovated store and consults with the new owner about what to do. While they are on the second floor, they don't notice the gangsters below wrapping cables around the shop and attaching them to a truck. With one strong pull, the entire building collapses. After this, Kyung gets a call from the gang leader, White Tiger, who arranges a meeting in an hour. Kyung immediately calls the real police, and we see officers equipping him with a wire, instructing him to gather as much information as possible during the meeting to secure White Tiger's arrest. At the meeting, Kyung inadvertently reveals himself by saying the boss's name, a detail he couldn't have known.
I don't think you guys can make that decision. I want to see your boss, White Tiger.
Stupid, don't mention White Tiger.
The gangsters make a call and receive instructions to investigate Kyung further. Kyung is taken to a boathouse, where the gangsters search him and find the wiretap. Afterward, White Tiger orders his men to kill both Kyung and the hostages. Hearing the command, Kyung fights to break free and escape. While the gangsters flee from the arriving police in a hovercraft, Kyung races to rescue his friends. To do so, he must also get onto the hovercraft. He leaps onto it from a bridge support but, dodging bullets, accidentally slips off the edge and falls into the water. Fortunately, his foot catches a rope and he ends up being pulled along behind the hovercraft, like a water skier. Trying to evade the police boats, the gangsters steer the hovercraft toward a nearby beach, scattering panicked beachgoers in all directions. Seeing this, Kyung barely manages to save a child from their path. The hovercraft runs over him, but because it's on a cushion of air, Kyung is unharmed. The hovercraft speeds through city streets, crashing into cars and scattering crowds of people. When the police admit they are powerless to stop the gangsters, Kyung grabs a sword from a nearby shop and races toward the hovercraft in a car. Slashing the air cushion with the sword, he forces the hovercraft to come to a halt, allowing the gangsters to be arrested. The hostages are freed, but White Tiger remains at large. Kyung and his friends decide to pursue him using the same hovercraft. They burst onto a golf course where White Tiger is waiting for news of the operation. Kyung steers the hovercraft straight toward the gangster, gleefully running him over with the air cushion. Now, White Tiger is no longer a fearsome mob boss but a battered and humiliated failure, finally giving the authorities something to arrest him for.